DeitelCh, Chapter 15, used in both 120 and 220. We're going to talk about filing, streams, object serialization, things of that sort. So these are the PowerPoint movies from Chapter 15 in the 10th edition of DeitelCh. All right. We're going to learn about how to create, read, update, whatever. There are new things in NIO, new IO APIs that we want to look at, especially in 220. Okay, 120 we'll do some of the basic things. Difference between text and binary, the formatter class, a scanner class, serializable object output streams, and how to use the JFile chooser. So we got some things to look at as we go through. So data. Stored in variables, the arrays are temporary. So we need to know how to persist them. That's kind of the word you use, persist. We want to retain them somewhere. Where do we want to retain them? Files, secondary storage devices, and for ITP 220, databases, of course. Now, in 220, I will expect you to know how to file into regular files as well. We did that. We're doing that in Mod 7 in ITP 120, and we're reviewing that in Mod 3 in ITP 220. So there you go. So what's a file and stream? The data just comes in as a stream of bytes. Somewhere that when it gets done, it puts on an end of file marker or a count of the total number of bytes or whatever. And the Java program needs to read back the information from a stream. So the terminology we use a lot is the streaming the data back and forth. So here's in bytes. Okay, pretty simple when you do that. Now when I read that back, how is it going to be read back? It can be read back as byte-based streams or character-based streams. Okay, so it's all stored binary, obviously, in the real world. I mean, that's the only thing computers understand. But when it gets read back, is it read back in a binary format, or is it read back as actual characters? When it comes back, it kind of depends, too, and when you store it. Is it readable by humans? Is it character-based so that when I open it up, I can open up in Notepad++? Or is it binary, so if I tried to open the file up, it'd look like gobbledygook, okay, and only that the computer can understand it as you read it back in. So Java program opens a file by creating an object and associating a stream of bytes or characters with it. That's the terminology you want to use. It can associate streams with different devices. We know system.in is our default, okay, for in, it's the keyboard. System.out, okay, typical default for that is the console. Okay, that's a standard output stream. And there is a system.error, which we've seen a little bit. That's the red stuff that comes out. It actually also, by default, gets sent to the console when you actually do that. So, class system provides methods, set in, set out, set error, to redirect the standard input, output, or error streams if you do not want them to go to the default. So I can actually do a system.in and tell it to go somewhere else, or read from somewhere else, or system.out and tell it to go out somewhere else. Now, where are these classes? Java.io and a really cool new one, Java.nio, standing for new IO. Don't you love that? Character-based input and output can be performed with scanner and formatter. We've used the scanner class extensively to read input from the keyboard, but you can also use it to read input from a file. Okay, and formatter is an output. It allows formatted data to be output to a text-based stream, similar to system.out.printf. I tend to use a formatter class if I want output to look pretty instead of using system.out.printf. If you notice, I don't use system.out.printf much. Nobody's going to turn in a console output to your boss anyhow. You want it to be in a file or something. Pretty output when you do that. SE8 added some really cool stuff, okay? And it did add another type of stream, which are called lambdas and streams. We'll talk about those in detail in ITP 220. Good stuff. All right, so how about NIO, the new input-output classes? There are some new classes in here, and we want to look at these briefly. I'm just going to mention them here. For the 220 folks, we will be looking at them in a little bit more detail. Okay, it comes from the java.nio.file. Okay, and there is a path. It's an interface. We all know what interfaces are. There's a path class. Has a bunch of really cool static methods to get information about the path. There's a files class, again static. Whenever you see a class that has static methods, it's typically a utility class, something that is used for utility to help you with other things. And then there's a directory stream interface, which is the interface for programs to interact through the contents of directories when you actually do that. We do need to distinguish the difference between an absolute path and a relative path. Hopefully you know the difference. Absolute path, C:, whatever, and a relative path relative to another directory when you do that. URIs are used, okay, more general form of the URLs that you're used to. On Windows, it's file://C:/ whatever. We'll see in the end of the chapter, we don't want people typing this in anyhow. Okay, we'll use one of two things, either the file dialog box to let the user pick where they want to read and write from, or the JFileChooser, which is a little bit newer one from java.swing. They both work equally as well when you do that. Now, what separator is used? Java takes care of it. We all know that Windows uses a \Linux, a /, and Java still processes the path. It takes care of it for you depending upon your platform you're using. So here's a real simple one. Okay, notice all the inputs from java.nio, and we are going to ask the user to enter the file or directory name. This is something I never want you to turn in for me, okay, because I don't want to have to figure out where my desktop is, or wherever I filed my storage. I want to be able to pick it out of a GUI when I do that, but this is just a good example for getting started. The paths.get next input, you're going to actually enter the file or directory name. Notice the static methods. Remember static methods, class.method. So if the files.exists, if that path is actually a file, okay, that path exists, it creates a file for it. Okay, path.getFileName, is it a directory? Is it absolute? When was it last modified? Sorry. Okay, a bunch of nice methods for actually handling files and directories and physical system of your computer itself. Kind of cool stuff. Okay, right past that. Sequential access files, text files, human readable text files as you go through. Java.io and Java.nio is unbelievably complex. There are so many ways to read and write things. Buffered, unbuffered, streams, bytes, a whole bunch of them. If you look at Java.io, it's very rich. And then they added some more stuff on top of it with Java.nio. We're only going to look at two types, okay? Sequential access text files and something called a serializable file as you go through and do that. We want to be able to read files if they are written in Notepad. So I want to be able to read a text file. But they can be a real hassle, okay, to do that, especially for your Java program. You'll see that as you go on. And so we will introduce another topic, something called serializable, which is a cool thing that Java takes care of a lot of the overhead for you. But let's first look at these sequential access files. Okay, no structure on the file. Java has no idea what it is. Okay, you must be the one that structures it. You must be the one that creates the delimiter. You must be the one that tells Java how to read it back, however it's supposed to be read back. There's no such thing as records in the Java language. Okay, you structure the file to meet the requirements of whatever your application is. Sounds like there's going to be more programming to it than normal, which there is. I need to go through. Okay, now he uses the formatter class in his examples. I go through and I will use, I don't tend to use that as much. You'll see that mine are a little bit different than what he does in 15.3, but good to look at this when you actually do that. Formatter outputs formatted strings to the specific stream. I tend to just use a method. I create a method called toStringF. Okay, and that's the one that I actually put it out so that it is formatted the way I want it to do. And that's where I would put out like Susie, pipe, Jones, pipe, 23 or something like that, and have my delimiter, and I get to define the delimiter, and I write out the file the way I want to. And then I just have a regular old method in the blueprint called toStringF. So it's going to be a little bit different. I will walk you through my way of doing it. You can do it whichever way you want. I don't care. Okay. He uses the formatter, add open file, add records, and close file. So he creates a new formatter. Again, I do not want line 26 in your programs. I want to be able to pick it. Okay, where is clients.txt? Let me explain this a little bit here and why I'm getting a little picky about this. Where are you going to stick that program? Okay, in this one it says it's relative, right? Because it's a relative path. Relative to what? Okay, relative to this program? Well, not the way you think it is, because this program right now I'm looking at is the .java file. Okay, but when you run this thing, you're running the .class file. Often they're not in the same folder. So what students will do, especially introductory students, is they get frustrated because they try to put clients.txt, okay, right into the same package as they put their Java programs, which is a wonderful thing, except the Java program is not going to find it if you write clients.txt like this, okay, because you're actually executing the .class file. So again, give the people and again, there's nothing that says I have the same file structure you do on my computer. I don't. And so you don't want to put an absolute path here, because that's even worse. Okay, and I had some 120 students last time I taught it turn in some absolute paths, and it said C:/Mickey Mouse/ because it was Mickey Mouse as well. My computer's not called Mickey Mouse. And so again, we'll see how to actually use a JFileChooser or a file dialog so I can pick where the file is. But beside that point, try catch. Okay, this is required to have a try catch. If you don't have one, it will say that you did not handle the exception. Okay, this is a checked exception. You must check it. Notice he's checking two different things, a security exception or a file not found exception when he does that. Okay, trying to open it up. To add records, okay, system.out.printf, enter account number, first name, last name, and balance, enter end of file indicator to end input. Okay, and that's fine. Okay, I don't tend to do that as much. I just essentially say, you know, press 999 when you're done or whatever. But that's okay. You'll see my code's a little bit different in 15 than his. While input.hasNext, try. Okay, try to send it out. Okay, output. Now who's output? Well, notice on line 26 it was named output. Output's not something special. You could call that junk. I don't care. Okay, it's just naming a variable. Output, and I tend to use output too. Format that, okay, and then catch format closed exception and no such element exception when you do that. So it goes out, okay, and then you close the file when you actually do that, okay. And you'll see my code looks a lot different as far as doing text files, and again, you can use whichever one you want. We got our exceptions that you have to handle when you do that. And make sure you use the system.exit, okay, to terminate the application, especially when you start using the file dialog box or the file chooser to pick them from. Now, what is file.exit? It just says exit the system. Typically, it's file.exit with a argument of 0, which means a successful program termination. Non-zero usually means an error occurred. And the argument that actually is put in there is executed from a batch file in Windows, and so you can. It actually has some implications when you do that. End of file key combinations. Okay, Control Z. In the middle of my Java program, I just don't like people typing Control Z. I guess that's okay. Okay, I end up having mine. I have a regular old loop in there that we learned earlier in the 120 class, and it just says type 999 when you're done. Okay, so we've got the scanner. Okay. Method hasNext, and again, you can use the scanner class, okay, for other than input from the keyboard. You can use it from input from a file or whatever it might be. So here's sample data for 15.3 as he does that, which will for creating the text file. And reading the data from the sequential access text file now, I again will do it a little bit differently. He tends to use the scanner. Okay, and that's fine. And I actually will have examples of this in the 220 class just to expand your horizons. Okay, I tend to use I might actually change some of the code over, but I tend to use an input buffer when I actually do that. But a lot of different stuff you can do. He uses a scanner class, okay, to read it in. I might convert my stuff over, I don't know. I just haven't used this that much. I mean, I just don't use it. I have a way that works, and that always helps when you actually do it. Sequential access text file, you get the scanner does not reposition at the beginning of the file. The program must close the file to reopen it. Keep that in mind. So he's got a menu option here. He puts a little menu out for you, which is kind of cool. We're going to use menus, start using menus in 120. 220, you're very familiar with menus. He has an enum here. We did not look at enums at all, okay, in 120. We'll look at them very briefly in 220. Again, I don't tend to use them. It's something they added late in the Java language, and I just don't have any use for them. Why create an extra enum when I can just actually put that in my regular blueprint? But that's fine. Look through it if you'd like to. It's all yours. I'll talk you through mine. Updating sequential access files 15.4.4, we really don't need to look at. You can skip. If you are doing updating, if you are doing queries, you should be using a database. I don't care if it's a simple database. MySQL is free, guys. Okay, very simple to do. You've got persistence, and you've got the MySQL database that can help you do a lot of stuff. And so the problem with updating a text file is that you got to go find it. And as soon as you start doing searches and all that, why not let the database do it for you? And he talks about that. 15.5, very important. I want to store, because I still use flat files at times. And what I'd like to do with a flat file is I'd just like to throw some stuff out, okay, and then I'd like to just read it back in, okay, and I want Java to take care of it all. Now, what do I mean by taking care of it all? It's a lot, writing text files is a lot worse than you might think. Let's think about this. I have, if you're in 120, I have an array list of insurance objects. Okay, an insurance object has a customer, okay, and it can be a variety of different types of insurance objects. It has a customer, and the customer has fields, and the insurance class has fields, okay, and how am I going to write that out so I can read it back? Okay, we will talk about that in detail in 120. So if you're in 220, it's assumed you know that. I would like to just persist it. I'd just like to store it out there. I don't want to search anything. I don't want to use a database. I just want to persist stuff out there. Java and other languages has a thing called object serialization. A serialized object is represented as a sequence of bytes that includes the object's data and its information, and I have no idea how to read a serialized file. If you open it up, it looks like gobbledygook. I don't care. As long as Java can serialize it, and then later on I tell Java to deserialize it, okay, that's a good thing. And if Java can go back and take all the gobbledygook it put out there and recreate those customers and recreate those insurance objects, okay, and recreate my array list, I'm a happy camper, and that's exactly what it'll do for you. I do want you to understand serializing. I think you actually do two different projects, two different modules with serialization in 120. I don't do one specifically in 220 most of the time. I might, you never know, but this is a topic you really need to understand. It's called object input streams and object output streams. These are from the old java.io, and they work wonderfully. Okay, so we can take an entire object. Now again, that's better than you think, because an array list is an object. An array list of insurance has a bunch of insurance objects on it, which has a bunch of customer objects in it. It doesn't matter. Okay, I can say I want to serialize that entire array list in one line of code, and then I can tell it to read it back in one line of code, which is pretty cool. We have a write object and a read object, where it writes out the object and it reads back the object. Okay, you must, and this is the most common mistake made, you must give Java permission to do this. That sounds kind of funny, but you must implement the interface serializable on anything that you want to be able to serialize. Now, you've learned a lot about interfaces. The first question you always ask when you come across an interface is, ooh, interfaces. Okay, abstract methods. I must fulfill the contract. I must write those methods. What methods do I need to write for serializable? The answer is none. None. Isn't that cool? I like none. It's called a tagging interface. Or I call it a marker interface. It contains no methods. It's really just marking that class to be serialized. Now, you need to be a little bit careful with that, because the array list is already serializable. Okay, that's a Java class. They already made it serializable, implement serializable. I don't have to worry about that. But you have to also, it's not recursive. So if you have an array list of insurance, the insurance class blueprint must be serializable. If the insurance has a customer as a field, the customer class must be serializable. So you really have to give Java permission, okay, to write out all these kinds of things. Now, make sure you're tricky about it. Do not serialize auto insurance and then serialize health insurance, then serialize art insurance. If you serialize the insurance class, okay, by inheritance, okay, it also will pass through to the subclasses when you do that. So just keep that in mind as you go through and work on it. So we import java.io.serializable, okay, on the blueprint of the class that you want serializable, okay, that you want to be serialized or persisted out when you do that. So it's just happens to be in java.io, so you've got to import it, but that's okay. Everything else is the same as what we've got. Now, you may have a field or two you do not want to persist out. That's kind of odd, rare, but I've done it at times. You just declare that one transient. Okay, and that's pretty cool. That variable will not be written out, and that variable will not be read back when you go through. Okay, I don't do that real often. All right, so then he actually does a example for you. I won't talk you through this example because I will talk you through my example. Mine's pretty similar. When you do that, I'll do it step by step. And then in 15.5, he goes through and reading and deserializing data from a serialized file. So once you write it out, then you got to read it back. And he goes through and does that. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Okay. Now, read the object throws an end of file exception if the attempt is made to read beyond the end. You have to. It is a checked exception. You must do a try catch on this when you do that. All right, I have more details now. I think it's more important than what he puts in here. He's kind of slimmed down chapter 15 in the 10th edition, and that's okay. There are a ton of other things he'll talk about at the very end here, but those are the two main ones, is doing text files and doing serialized files. I want to open a file. I want the user to pick where the file is. There is a JFileChooser in javax.swing. Okay, and there is a file dialog box, okay, in the old aught. They both work equally as fine. I'm just used to using the file dialog box. Doesn't really matter. Use whichever one you want. He's got you an example here of a file chooser. Go ahead and look at it if you want to. No biggie. Comes up looking like that. Kind of neat. Okay, but the important thing here is the user gets to pick the path and the user gets to pick the file name and then click open. This is the GUI. When you do that. When you're using this GUI, you now have two threads, the main thread and the GUI thread. Okay? Make certain the last line of your program that's going to run is system.exit0 so that the program actually ends. All right? If you still, and you're in 120 and you still see that little red square down in the bottom right, okay, your program's still running. If in NetBeans, at the very, very bottom, it tells you what is executing, okay, you need system.exit0, so make sure you do that. 15.7, lots of other stuff he used to have in the main part of 15 and the previous one. Talks about input streams, output streams, pipes, that kind of thing as you go through and do that. All right, different to look at when you do that. Buffered streams, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, I may convert my code over to using the formatter and the scanner. I'll think about that. It's nice seeing this other code. When you do that, I'll have to go see which one they're testing on now in 8 and do some conversions. Your code may be changed from when you see it. All these kinds of things, just tons of them. Thanks, guys.